Harlem, 1951. Rain fell the way it only falls in New York. Sideways, angry, personal. Bumpy Johnson stood under the awning of Wells' restaurant, hat tilted low, watching a boy across the street try to light a cigarette with shaking hands. The kid couldn't have been more than 17. Too thin, coat too big, eyes too old. That's how Bumpy knew. Fear ages you faster than time. The boy finally noticed him staring and froze. Most men did when they recognized Bumpy Johnson. Some crossed the street. Some smiled too hard. Some reached for guns they'd never get to use. This kid did none of that. He just swallowed. "Mr. Johnson," the boy said, voice cracking. I didn't know where else to go. Bumpy stepped closer, blocking the rain for him. That's usually a bad sign. "They got my sister." That stopped him. "What do you mean got?" The boy licked his lips. "Numbers runners. They say she owes. But it ain't her debt. It's my father's. He died last year." Bumpy exhaled slowly. Dead men's debts were the most dangerous kind. Nobody left to argue. Nobody left to pay. "Where is she?" The boy hesitated. "Basement on 131st. Old tailor shop. They're waiting till midnight." Waiting meant pain. Midnight meant examples. Bumpy looked down at his watch. 10:42 p.m. "Names," Bumpy said. The boy shook his head. They said names don't matter anymore. That meant one thing. Someone higher had sanctioned it. Bumpy straightened his coat. "Go home." "What?" "You heard me." "But my sister." "If you stay, she dies anyway." "Go." The boy ran. Bumpy stepped into the rain. By 11:10, he had answers. By 11:25, he had confirmation. The order came from inside Harlem. Not Italians. Not cops. A black crew. That was worse. At 11:40, Bumpy walked into the tailor shop. The door wasn't locked. It never is when people want you to hear the screams. Two men stood guard. One reached for his gun. Bumpy didn't slow down. The man froze. "You know who I am," Bumpy said quietly. The guard stepped aside. In the basement, a single bulb swung. A young woman sat tied to a chair, blood on her lip, eyes wide but unbroken. Good. Still fighting. Across from her stood Calvin Reese. Reese had grown up with Bumpy. Ran numbers together. Split bread. Shared jail cells. Reese didn't smile. "She ain't paid," Reese said. "She ain't owed," Bumpy replied. Reese shrugged. "That don't die when people do." Bumpy looked at the girl. "You touch her again?" Reese met his eyes. "Midnight's close." That was a moment. Bumpy understood. This wasn't about money. This was about challenging gravity. Seeing if Bumpy Johnson still pulled the world toward him. Bumpy took off his hat. Set it down carefully. "You got till midnight," Reese said. "Then I make an example." Bumpy leaned in. "No, you got till now." Reese laughed. That was his mistake. Bumpy didn't kill Calvin Reese. Not because he couldn't. Because he wouldn't. There was a rule Bumpy lived by. One even his enemies respected. No blood where children could hear it. And upstairs, above the tailor shop, families slept. Instead, Bumpy did something worse. He sat down, pulled a chair close, face to face. "You ever wonder why you're still breathing?" Bumpy asked. Reese scoffed. "Because I'm careful." Bumpy shook his head. "Because I don't kill men who don't understand what they've done." Reese stiffened. Bumpy stood and walked to the girl, untied her, handed her his coat. "Go. Don't run. Walk like you belong." She hesitated, then went. Reese reached for his gun. Bumpy was faster. Gun hit the floor. Bumpy didn't raise his voice. "You kill her," Bumpy said. "Harlem burns. Not loud. Quiet. Stores close. Doors shut. Names vanish. Your crew starve before they bleed." Reese's bravado cracked. "You can't." "I already am." At 11:59, sirens wailed outside. Reese's eyes widened. Bumpy smiled, thin, cold. "I didn't call the cops," Bumpy said. "I called your people." Footsteps thundered above. Not police. Harlem. Men Reese owed. Men Reese cheated. Men Reese scared. The basement filled. Bumpy stepped back. This is what happens, he said, when you forget who protects the children. He walked out as screams rose behind him. 2 nights later, someone tried to kill Bumpy. Car pulled alongside him near Lenox. 2 shots, missed by inches. Bumpy didn't chase. He already knew who ordered it. Mercy always sends a bill. Instead of retaliation, Bumpy did something unexpected. He called a meeting. Every crew, every corner, every whisper. He stood in a church basement and said one sentence. Any man who harms a woman or child in my city answers to all of us.
The time has come.
No
Yes,
threats, no guns,
Then we move.
just
Agreed.
silence. That silence reshaped Harlem. 3 weeks later, a fire broke out on 145th, set deliberately. Inside, a mother and 2 kids. They lived, barely. The man responsible ran. He made it 6 blocks. Then the street closed, not violently. Doors shut, lights went off. People stepped aside. He was found the next morning, alive, broken, waiting. Bumpy never touched him. Didn't need to. Years later, a reporter asked Bumpy, "What's the most dangerous moment of your life?" Bumpy thought, "Not bullets, not prisons, not enemies. The night I chose not to kill," he said, "because that's when I learned power ain't pulling a trigger. It's knowing when not to." Harlem didn't celebrate what happened. That's the part outsiders never understand. There were no parades, no speeches, no headlines screaming justice. The newspapers wrote what they always wrote. Man found alive, question released. Names blurred, details softened, truth trimmed down to fit a column inch. But Harlem knew. Harlem always knows. For weeks after the fire on 145th, something changed in the air. Not peace. Peace is too clean a word. It was restraint, like a fist unclenching, slowly, carefully, afraid it might have to close again. Bumpy Johnson felt it every morning when he stepped outside. Men nodded instead of staring. Women didn't pull their children closer when he passed. Old shopkeepers who used to pretend not to see him now met his eyes, just for a second, and nodded once. Not gratitude, recognition, power. Bumpy had learned wasn't loud. It didn't announce itself. It showed up in what didn't happen. No more lost daughters. No more debts paid in bruises. No more messages carved into fear. That silence had a cost. And Bumpy was the one paying it. 3 weeks later, the boy from the rain came back. He was cleaner now. Hair cut, coat replaced. Still nervous, but standing straighter. "My sister says thank you," he said. Bumpy didn't answer. "She got a job," the boy continued. "Nurse's assistant. She says she's leaving Harlem." "Good," Bumpy said. The boy hesitated. "You saved her." Bumpy finally looked at him. His eyes were tired. "No," he said. "I stopped something. Don't confuse the two." The boy didn't understand then. He would one day. That night, Bumpy sat alone in his apartment. No music, no company, just the city humming outside like it always had. He poured a drink and didn't touch it. He thought about Calvin Reese. Reese had lived, barely. When he came out of the hospital, nobody took his calls. Corners went cold. Runners disappeared. Power doesn't forgive weakness, especially not when it's exposed. Reese left Harlem within a month. That was mercy. It haunted Bumpy more than blood ever had. Killing was simple. You did it, and the world adjusted. Mercy lingered. It asked questions. It demanded patience. It left men alive long enough to regret, and sometimes that regret turned into something worse. Bumpy knew the risk. He accepted it anyway, because the alternative was becoming a man who solved everything with death, and that man couldn't protect children. He could only create orphans. Around midnight, there was a knock at the door. Bumpy didn't reach for a gun. He already knew who it was. Father Callahan stood in the hallway, hat in his hands. "You don't visit church anymore," the priest said. Bumpy shrugged. "God knows where I am." They sat at the small kitchen table. The bottle stayed closed. "I heard about 145th, Callahan said carefully. "You hear a lot of things," Bumpy replied. The priest studied him. "You could have ended it differently." "Yes, but you didn't." "No." Why? Bumpy was quiet for a long time. Because, he said finally, if I teach this city that killing is the answer, it'll never stop asking the question. Callahan nodded slowly. And what does it cost you? Bumpy smiled, thin and tired. Sleep, peace, certainty. That's a heavy price. So is the other one. The priest stood to leave. At the door, he turned back. You know they'll come for you again. Bumpy nodded. They always do. But they won't come the same way. No, Bumpy agreed. They'll come quieter. After Callahan left, Bumpy sat by the window until dawn. He watched Harlem wake up. Bread trucks, kids running late, women sweeping stoops. Life continuing, stubborn and loud. That was the thing about Harlem. It survived everyone. Months passed. The rules held, not because Bumpy enforced them with violence, but because Harlem enforced them with memory. People remember what happened when lines were crossed. Not the punishment, but the response. The way the streets themselves seemed to close ranks. And then one afternoon, a man approached Bumpy outside Wells. Italian. Nervous. Respectful. We hear things change, the man said. Bumpy sipped his coffee. Things always change. We want to do business, the man continued. But clean. Bumpy looked at him. Really looked. This wasn't fear. It was calculation adjusting to reality. Clean, Bumpy said, means no shortcuts. The man nodded. Understood. That was how it spread. Not fear. Standards. Years later, when Bumpy's heart finally failed him at that same restaurant, people said many things about his life. Gangster, kingpin, criminal, protector, hypocrite, saint. All wrong. All incomplete. Because Bumpy Johnson wasn't defined by the men he killed. He was defined by the moments he didn't. By the nights he chose restraint over reputation. By the times he let Harlem decide instead of forcing his will upon it. By the weight he carried so others didn't have to. And the boy from the rain? He became a lawyer. Left Harlem. Came back years later. Walked past Wells one evening and paused. Just for a second. He didn't know if Bumpy Johnson remembered him. But he remembered Bumpy. Not as a gangster. As a man who proved that real power isn't about how many people fear you. It's about how many sleep safely, because you chose not to pull the trigger.